welcome to UC Today. My name's David Dungay. We are here for another big UC news update. I have with me some fantastic industry experts from all corners of the market. I'm super excited. I'll go around the room quickly. We have Mr. Rob Scott, Mr. UC, publisher of UC Today, Azias Caravala from ZK Research, Erwin Lazar from Metrigy. We've got Dan Root and Craig Durr from Wayne House Research, and we have Evan Kirstel, Mr. Social Media himself. Welcome everyone to the show. I hope you're all well. So, Rob, shall we get straight into that news? Tell us, what's going on, what's on your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what a start to the year. Lots of news, lots of things happening and lots to consider. So first of all, I really wanted to talk about ChatGPT. I don't think anyone has not heard about that right now in this industry. So certainly, ChatGPT, is it a Microsoft play to resurrect Bing or possibly even Clippy? I don't know, but I'm sure it's going to be used in some better ways than that. So David, what do you think? We've covered this. Is this a big headline for us in the UC space?
Yeah, I think this is a huge headline. Microsoft are committing a hefty sum of money to this project, to this relationship as well. And what that's going to mean for some of the Microsoft product, particularly around Microsoft Teams, I think is really interesting. We're seeing some of these AI tools already, serve up those suggestions, in the sort of the quick reply formats. And I think this is just going to extend that and extrapolate that immensely. We're all calling on data points when we're having these conversations. I think ChatGPT, let's get that right, is really going to fill quite a useful need in that respect. So that's how I feel. I have had a play with it myself as well. It does some things scarily well, and other things not so great just yet. So luckily, if you're a journalist out there and you're not out of a job just yet. So that's good news. But it does a whole heap of other stuff, quite well as well. So let's throw it out to the floor. Erwin, what is your take on Chat GPT? What are you seeing at the moment, and how's it going to impact services like Microsoft Teams?
Yeah, just give me a second. I'll ask ChatGPT to respond. I think we're seeing a lot of buzz, a lot of hype around it in so many different areas of society. I have college-age kids who are already seeing the impact of it just in their educational experience, and concerns from teachers that it's being used to write papers. But I think when you think about the communication, collaboration, customer experience space, it offers significant potential to just improve how people access data in a much more natural language fashion. So you mentioned Microsoft making a significant investment, bringing ChatGPT into Bing. That could easily be applied in enterprise search. So, I'm getting ready to hop on a meeting. ChatGPT has a script that pulls in information related to that meeting, allows me to prepare for it, provides information during the meeting, maybe capturing what's happening and providing suggestions, things that I should be thinking about. You can see all of the opportunities to use it in the customer service space. We're already seeing companies starting to build customer bots and self-service type applications using ChatGPT, companies like Cognity as an example. So I think this is, as I told my kids, I think this is probably the most impactful development in technology we've seen in a really long time, maybe since mobile devices and maybe even since the internet itself. I think it's going to revolutionize the way people interact with data and the way that people build scripts, build applications, manage their networks, and so on.
Yeah, just a personal anecdote. I actually use ChatGPT to co-author the last of my 6 blogs. I'm not a great writer like Zias is, so I'm much happier having it generate an outline and copy, and then going and adding flair and edits and proofreading. And I actually had it on my last blog turn it into a PowerPoint deck via code, uploading that code to PowerPoint. And it put out a perfect PowerPoint presentation, then used DALL-E, the cousin of ChatGPT, to create the images for the PowerPoint. And it was about a 10-minute exercise. Would have taken me hours in the past. So it's a real time saver. What say you, Zayas?
Well, I was going to say first of all, I use ChatZK, so is the way I read it. But I think what's interesting here is sort of the bigger implications of what this means in sort of the cloud wars. A lot of people have Microsoft hasn't really been an innovator in anything in a long time, right? Google kind of bested them in the browser wars, and people have been waiting for Google, for Microsoft to do something innovative for a while. They've been a good fast follower, but this is an area where I think when you asked people a couple of years ago who's going to lead the world into AI, I think most people would have said Google. And frankly, for Google to let Microsoft come in and do this, they should be embarrassed that this has now become so heavily funded by Microsoft. And so Microsoft's been chasing Google in the browser wars for a long time, and they're a distant two. And if you think about how this could change those dynamics, it's pretty interesting from an overall market standpoint. The leg up that Microsoft seems to have up on Google now.
You know what I would add to that is what's interesting that I've noticed is in the industry, there has been investments in this generative AI. You can look at what Zoom came out with their Zoom AI sales tool. RingCentral had an acquisition a while ago, even far back as High Five and Dialpad, when there was an acquisition of Voice AI. And it was bringing things up. But what this is doing, to quote someone, it's taking it to 11. All of a sudden, you've got a service that just totally surpasses what these other ones have been doing. So we're going to see a lot of this in those contact centers as a service and things like that. But I think the big thing we're going to see is we're going to start seeing this as an API service out of Azure, which now allows all these other services to add it on very quickly too. So now this democratizes it, right? So Microsoft is making the service. I wouldn't be surprised not to see Amazon doing something comparable too, to put it as a API service in their cloud as well. And we're going to start seeing the whole market rising to this level of new investment.
Fantastic. Should we move on to our second topic? Rob, what have you got?
Well, I mean, as we all know, it's not very pretty out there right now. Lots of doom and gloom. The industry is, said to be potentially suffering at the moment. Market conditions aren't great. So I thought well worth us talking about, some of these, how that's affecting the UC industry, how it's affecting companies like RingCentral, Microsoft, Twilio, and Amazon and Google, and all those that are laying people off right now. Was that just inevitable for those major players coming off the kind of pandemic bump, or, should we be worried for the wider industry? I mean, David, lots of news stories there. I think you mentioned Avaya offline earlier. Maybe we could even talk about Avaya's current state of play.
Yeah, so I think you put it very well actually there, Rob. From my perspective, the pandemic was very much a boom time, right, for all of those businesses, and I think we're just seeing a bit of a hangover from that, during this economic sort of downturn, if you like. On the Avaya stuff, yeah, it's. That's kind of not necessarily related to the downturn in the economy. They've got some other stuff going on there with their current debt restructuring going on. We're waiting for the sort of the pending decision on that financial stuff. That's a bit of a confluence of bad timing, if you like, in some respects for Avaya. So anyway, Craig, you've been doing some stuff around this. What are your thoughts there?
So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to finish sending my resume to Zeus. So just look for that coming in your inbox as we talk through this, just in case. Okay. What's really interesting about this topic is that if you look how the tech industry is juxtaposed to what's taking place in the other employment sector, especially in the U.S. So in December, the U.S. released its Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it actually showed unemployment across the board actually went down for us on this side of the pond, down to like 3.5. And it's about the lowest that it's been in about 5 years in this context. And they're saying that it's a solid economy and it's growing. But this tech section, like you said, David, is actually dealing with the repercussions of the whole work from home activity. I was looking at two things, and I think this really kind of helps say why the other area is going up and tech sector is going down. Well, the tech sector, everyone went home. People were shopping online and ordering food for delivery, right? There was a lot of need for online-based services and technologies, communications, and what have you. And it was a rising tide, and all these ships were able to enjoy that and invest in the future. But as Wall Street was asking for those growth rates to continue, it became a challenge. So I think that is the repercussions specifically to the tech sector. Now, if you want to ask what's taking place on the other side, here in the US, based upon those numbers I was talking about, the services industry had a huge vacuum. All of a sudden, there was no one to work in hotel and recreation. There was no one working in restaurants and things of this nature. And so now we're at the point here in this where we're starting to catch up on that. So that's really supporting this oddity within that data set. But to your point, Davos, there were several executives, Microsoft CEO, there was the CEO of Intel, all talking about cautious times going forward here. And a lot of these people now are having to rationalize those capital expenditures, especially with the cost of capital right now too. People and employees are expensive. It's going to be a challenge.
I don't think it's all tech though. If you look across the board, a lot of the earnings calls, the network vendors, Arista, Juniper, Extreme, have all put up really good numbers, and same with the cyber companies. And I think what we're seeing here, Rob, is sort of a correction back, right? Companies clearly overinvested in collaboration tools. There's stories of companies buying 4 or 5, like they're buying everything, right, as a way to let people work remotely. Now that they're starting to bring people back to the office, a lot of those projects they had put on hold, which are around the areas of network upgrade and even thinking about how do I secure all these home workers, those got put on hold, and there is a lot of pent-up demand for that. So I think what we're seeing here is a shifting of spend away from collaboration and cloud services, which again people just overspent on almost as a defensive mechanism to make sure they continue to run. But I do think that there's always this pendulum that swings to and fro. And I think we're in a valley right now. And I do think you'll see as companies get their strategies in order, you'll see it come back, but it won't come back nearly as fast as it declined, right?
Yeah, and I think there's a big trickle-down effect, too. If you look at big tech retrenching, we've seen that trickle down to a lot of the supply chain and their partners and suppliers. Just
They're
this
part of the
morning,
problem.
just this morning, I heard a big tech company, I won't name names, but 200,000+ employees implementing a travel ban. So, the effect of these companies on the wider industry creates, challenges for the whole economy, but does create opportunities for those early stage companies, those fast, aggressive startups, et cetera, to create new opportunities.
I was going to say there's lots of noise at the moment around hybrid work. Still, it's not going away anytime soon. But I recently read in a report or watched a report, and someone was talking about the kind of tangible tech boom. Actually, the winners of in 2023 could actually be the providers or the suppliers and manufacturers of kit. That are we're putting in these homes and these rooms and that kind of thing. What do you think?
I actually don't know that, Rob, because I'm cautiously optimistic. Is that the right idea? Because I was just looking at some Q4 results that are starting to come in. We got some early indications from people. Well, Logitech already had their results by the time this call is. We're getting some indications from other people. And I think I see two interesting things. I mean, Microsoft just posted this incredible number of monthly active users, right? I still think that number, I think it was 280 million MAUs, they said, is doing well. And there's an adjustment taking place on those devices. The indications I'm getting, I think the market's going to be cautious. And I think it has a lot to do with there's a lot of kit out there, a lot of licenses, and a rationalization taking place, deploying and putting these in place. Erwin, I think you just actually had some notes about that too, huh?
Yeah, we're publishing some research very shortly that'll show some of that data that shows roughly half of companies, especially if you think about the meeting application space, running more than one application, almost 30% of them that are looking to consolidate, looking to save money, rationalize, as Zaya said earlier. So I think that's going to be the trend. But yeah, on the flip side, hybrid work's not going away, and companies are investing in tools and hardware that will allow those people who are working remote, working in the office, to have an equal experience. You can't go back to that scenario that we had previous to COVID, where if I was the remote worker and I was dialed into a meeting, I had absolutely no idea what was going on.
And Erwin, I would agree. The research that we've been seeing this fall, I've been doing a fair amount of interviews out in the market, are, we are still going to move forward with our plans for hybrid work, but we also, I'm seeing a lot of what Zayas was saying as far as network projects are really starting to be prioritized, and looking at how is it that we get data prioritization within our communications platforms and within our traffic out as being a real choke point or a bottleneck as of right now, as folks are coming back and having hybrid meetings using different platforms and things like that within the office. We're starting to see that really interrupt some of the more prioritized meetings within a room and slow down those connections. So we're still seeing investment, and I would say I'm maybe a little more optimistic than Craig on certain aspects of the market, but overall, we are still going to see kind of a right sizing of both, physical footprint now that we have hybrid capabilities, pretty much everywhere, and also within kind of that staffing, element in some of these investment areas over the last couple of years.
Bringing the conversation back to Avaya now, we did mention Avaya at the start of the conversation. What does this mean? Dan, you said a right sizing there. Is Avaya going to be able to right size itself? Or what are your thoughts around that? And what are you hearing? Zeus, do you want to kick us off?
Well, they're still in the midst of it, right? They've got to. If you've talked to, I think a lot of us have talked to Alan Mazurek, their CEO, about this, but they're at a certain revenue and their cost structure was here, and so he's got to bring it down to here, and that's easier to do in some countries than others, because in the U.S. you can just whack people, and across the pond where you guys are, that's not so easy to do, and so he's in the middle of doing that, and I do think they will bring it down to where it needs to be. I think there was a lot of inefficiencies at that company. The first time I talked to him, he made a comment saying, look, the way this company was run, I could add a bunch of people to it and our revenues wouldn't go up. The same thing is true that I could cut a bunch of heads and our revenues aren't likely to go down. Obviously at the level that he's cutting, they have to make their decisions, but that company was involved in, they tried to be everything to everyone, and instead of being focused on a couple of areas. And I think that's the end goal for Avaya, is to be focused on a couple of areas, right size the headcount down to that, and be able to do a few things well instead of a lot of things mediocre. And so much of how that manifests itself will be determined on how the financial situation plays out, whether they actually go into bankruptcy or they can restructure. And I really hope that comes soon, because I think that's holding everything else up. I'm not sure where the holdup is there. I know the creditors have a big say in this, and whether it goes to court or not, I think it's less in the company's hands now and more in the creditors' hands. But resolving that will go a long way into resolving the rest of the situation. So then, no, on the back end of this, there will be an Avaya coming out of this. We're just not sure what it's going to look like.
Hey, Zayas, let me ask you something. So we heard Microsoft had some layoffs, WebEx had some earlier in the year, but Zoom has not had anything. And Greg Davis, actually, when he was at Davos, did make mention that he thought they were in a good state. What's this group's take on Zoom in this process? Who's enjoyed a lot of growth during this last couple of years?
Well, they have, and they were the poster child for hybrid work, and they're the poster child for post-hybrid work, right? So, their stock's been hurt more than anybody, and I haven't seen any sizable layoffs. I know a few people that have gone from there, but they're, it's interesting that John Chambers used to talk about this all the time, that when markets are down, it's the time to invest and set up yourself to break away when the markets turn up. And you look, they're all in on phone, right? Their investments there have been pretty clear. They're both feed into contact center, and then they're doing all these weird things like email and calendar that I don't know if it's going to bear any fruit for them, maybe, right? But they're at least trying to invest in a lot of adjacent markets, and this would be the time to actually do that. And will all those things stick? Maybe, maybe not, but at least they'll be in a position that when we do see the swing back up, they'll have the product ready to go. So.
And often you see that many of the cutbacks are in areas that are underperforming within organizations. Yeah. I think there's also that the layoffs start to feed upon themselves, where companies say, whoa, everybody else is laying off people. Maybe I should go and lay off people. But there's also some empirical research that shows that layoffs don't actually contribute to improvement in the bottom line. They make people less productive. They start looking for the exits. So, I'm hopefully that maybe Zoom's taking a little bit different approach and saying, like Zayas did, this is an opportunity to invest, and we've got enough cash cushion to get us through the next 6 months or so.
Yeah, so I've been in companies I remember at Yankee Group when we were like, people sit around and they wonder, am I going to be next? And you're right, everyone, that does really impact productivity.
Should we move on to our third and final topic of the day? Rob, what's on the agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the vendor landscape is always changing, isn't it, in the UC space? And we had a little rumor recently, and we're not, certainly like to know whether it was true or not. But 8x8 and RingCentral getting together, I'd certainly like to talk through that one to start with. Plus, there's been a very recent acquisition deal proposed that I'd certainly like to talk on too. So let's start with 8x8 and RingCentral, David. Was there any truth in that?
Well, look, hey, it's we must stress it is a rumor, but it's come from a fairly credible source. Certainly it looks like a conversation's been had. Whether that has gone any further than a conversation, that's up for debate. That sort of came out to the market around sort of the end of November time. So it's been quiet for a couple of months now. So I'd kind of think, if there's going to be some more news, that we'd be hearing about that fairly soon. The big Mitel and Atos acquisition, hasn't been finalised, I don't believe, just yet. But that'd be another two sort of heavyweights coming together. Of course, Atos, the old sort of unified teams that was spun out of Siemens, way back when as well. So two big deals if they happen. But I'm interested in what our audience have to say on that. I'm gonna go to Evan first. Should we talk about Mitel and Atos? What are your thoughts there, Evan? What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Well, interestingly, I had the chance to chat with David Petz, the SVP of Cloud at Mitel yesterday on Talking Heads. And obviously, he's very excited for the acquisition. It can't say a lot about it until it's finished, but there is a tremendous opportunity to grow market share in the DACH, the German-speaking area of Europe and Western Europe, where Unify still has a great presence and very loyal customer base. And there was a lot of innovation happening at Unify for many years. I looked at the client app several years ago, and it was really cutting edge. That slowed somewhat under Atos, so there's a belief they can sort of reinvigorate, renew, and grow that opportunity. And this is again part of Mitel's doubling down on reach and market share. What do you think?
Yeah, I actually think you hit the nail on the head there. It is the doubling down of Mitel. I think, it's interesting when Mitel cut their deal with Ring, because they didn't go the cloud office route, a lot of people just assumed that Mitel was waving the white flag, right? That, our day is over. We're going to sell off our base and quietly go away. And that's not been the case. When I've talked to, Tarun, their CEO, or Graham Bevington, their head of sales, they're very clear, right? And I agree with them, right? That if you can manage, legacy doesn't necessarily mean bad, right? You look at Dell EMC, that company prints so much money selling on-prem servers and PCs. They're not trying to be a cloud company, but they're making a lot of money selling legacy. And so they decided to go down the route. They're too late to go to cloud. So they're going to take their on-prem base and drive innovation around it. You can containerize it, you can virtualize it, you can private cloud it, and do everything you can to make that product better. Is it a growing market? No, right? It's in decline. But if you manage, traditional business well, you can do that. And so what Unify does now is it gives them an additional install base with which to execute on that on. And so I think that we got to give them kudos here, right? That, like I had mentioned, Avaya trying to be all things to all people. Mitel's not trying to do that. They're trying to do one thing really well. And I think that's, there's a lesson to be learned there, right? That, they're still, in fact, if you look at the overall size of the markets, take all the vendors, all the cloud vendors at face value. How many total cloud seats would that be? Maybe 30 million, right? The total addressable market for business desktops is like 400 million, right? So we're talking 90+% of the market is still on-prem. And so that will decline over time, but it's going to be years before it's even at the 50% point. And so People have asked me, do I think the world will eventually be all cloud and communications? I'm like, I don't know. It's a maybe. I'll be long retired by then. So,
But you're right. You can look at parallel industries like how Dell did this early on with their EMC acquisition and things
yeah,
like that. There's still great cash cows there, and it's hard to argue with a number of 75 million installed base of users.
yes, that's a
It's
big install base.
It's huge. And you're talking about even the ability just to even sell and continue to create suite-oriented products around that, and what have you, is these guys have the opportunity to really have a secure, targeted audience that they can address. And what I really loved about their announcement is that they really emphasized the word exclusive talks to buy Unify. They're out there, Mitel, and they're talking about the idea that, look, we are the player here coming in for this.
Yeah, that's a French regulatory thing, though. In the U.S., they would have sasaid that have entered negotiations or whatever, however we worded it. But that is a French regulatory requirement. So,
is that what it is? Okay, got it.
Yeah.
They're bringing in a pretty significant managed services piece too. Having professional services, those folks coming over from Atos, that really helps build on the Mitel vision of not just supporting legacy infrastructure, but working it into communication processes so companies can build services, features, et cetera, on top of the communications that they have.
Yeah, certainly an interesting one. Let's just jump back to that 8x8 and RingCentral deal. Zeus, I know you live just down the road from both of those companies. So, what have you heard on the street?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I think they probably looked at them, but I think all companies that are, in an acquiring position are probably looking at smaller companies. There's two reasons to acquire, right? One is that you try and bring in some technology that you don't have. And I don't think that's the case with 8x8 and Ring. You could argue contact center, 8x8 has that, but Ring doesn't. But that would really mess up that relationship Ring has with NICE. And the other one is to consolidate share. And I think, as I just mentioned, but we've been talking about Mitel, we are so early in the cloud cycle now that I don't know if it makes sense for RingCentral to take that capital that they'd have to spend to buy 8x8 and use that to drive share. I know some of their cloud office relationships like with Voda and ALE and even Unify haven't really gotten off the ground yet. If they would just take that money and invest it in that would probably get them more of a share gain than buying all of 8x8. And so I think I know in this industry, there's lots of consolidation going on. We've seen it in the device space, but it's too early in cloud communications for that to happen. If it were going to happen, it would have happened when Ring's market cap was 10x what it was now. Then you can just do a stock buy, and then even if the stock corrects itself, you essentially get the company for free, right? Or a significant discount. So I just don't think the timing's right. I do think they probably look at them every once in a while. The fact that there were former Ring executives there, it kind of adds to the spiciness of the story. But I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon.
Any other comments on that one?
Ring is just coming off of their big sales kickoff, and you can go and see some comments that Mo, their CEO, is making right now. They're fired up, and their story is they have enough in their quiver to go out to the market right now and capture a lot more market share right now. They don't have a story out, and I believe them that they're suffering for customer acquisitions opportunities right now.
I'm of the mindset that I think everything we've said here is true. I think there was probably a conversation had, that rumor has gone out, but I don't. I'm of the belief that I don't think the timing is right for that transaction to actually go through. So I think there might have been initial conversations, and maybe down the road in years to come, that comes together. But I think as of right now, it's mostly just rumor mill versus tangible close dates. Then again, Dave's given us a smirk, so maybe Dave knows more than he's letting on.
No. I don't know anything, honest. There's been some absolutely fantastic insights there today. It's full of great information and opinion and thoughts. We're gonna leave shortly, but before we do, we've got some big industry events going on. Rob, do you want to give us a bit of a rundown of what's happening at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a busy time for the industry in terms of in-person events, and some of these are hybrid events as well, and some are even just online. But certainly, January kicked off with UC Summit, 23rd of Jan. Our online video series opened up, which is full of big UC updates from vendors and lots of trend sessions talking about how the market's going to shape up this year. So don't miss out on that. But following that, we've got ISE in Europe. That's got a huge UC hall now. That's the 31st of January. We've got a Teams Fireside Chat event on the 9th of February. We've got the Cloud Comms Summit. I think that's the London event, and that's 8th of March. And following that, we've got the big Enterprise Connect, as usual. That's coming around. Really looking forward to that. And last but not least, another Teams-focused event, a community event, which is Comms V Next. So tons of events. I'm sure you guys are going to be at some of those events.
Yeah, I'll be at a handful of those.
Well, I look forward to bumping into
the beer's on Zeus, so we'll look forward to his credit card and meeting everyone there.
Drinks on Zeus.
A really good lineup. Yeah, lots of events this quarter. Absolutely get yourself to those and jump on our events page if you need to find out.
Actually, Mobile World Congress is coming up too, and I'm headed to that because there's a lot of 5G interest in this industry as well. So,
come on, Zeus, 6G. The action is 6G. I have a little anecdote I'll tell you offline, but
it's going to 11.
Time to move on.
It is. What's going to be really great about ISC and this next quarter is we're just going to see a lot of products actually. It's going to be a petting zoo. We're going to finally get to see some things that were announced in the last 3 to 6 months. Logitech's Site AI camera is going to be demoed out there. Cisco, Microsoft, their partnership of Teams-enabled rooms are going to be demoed there in beta. Google's talking about and showing their Zoom partnership and their interoperability story as well. So what I'm excited about, especially in this next 2 to 3 months, is actually seeing these things in the wild and the customer adoption, see what's going on with them.
Great. Well, I think that's a really great place to end. And if you are attending one of those events and you see one of our illustrious experts here, make sure you go in and say hello in between having a look at those products that Craig mentioned. So without further ado, I'm going to say thank you to everyone. Rob, Zeus, Erwin, Dan, Evan, Craig, I think I've got everyone there. Thank you so much for joining us, and I wish you all well.
Thank you. Good seeing everyone.
And thank you for watching. Be watching me, David Dungay, at UC Today. If you liked today's conversation, please give us a like and a share on social media. That's it from me. Have a good time.